There is a moment, and perhaps you have lived it more than once, when the noise of everything around you becomes so loud that you can no longer hear your own heartbeat. The emails pile up. The conversations replay in your mind at 2 in the morning. The questions you cannot answer keep knocking on the door of your thoughts. And no matter how many times you tell yourself to rest, something inside you refuses to settle. You lie down, but your mind is still running. You smile. But behind the smile is a weight you've been carrying so long that you've almost forgotten what it felt like to set it down. You go through the motions of the day, the work, the conversations, the responsibilities. And yet somewhere beneath all of it is a quiet, aching hunger for something the world keeps promising but never quite delivering. You want peace, not the temporary kind that comes when circumstances go your way, not the fragile kind that shatters the moment the next hard thing arrives. You want something that holds, something that stays, something that no storm can reach. And it is precisely to that hunger that God is speaking today. He is not speaking to the version of you that has it all together. He is not addressing the polished, composed, spiritually consistent version of you that you sometimes pretend to be when you are around other people. He is speaking to the one underneath all of that. The one who woke up this morning with a knot in the chest. The one who has been quietly asking for a sign that things are going to be okay. The one who scrolled past 100 things today looking, without even realizing it, for a word that actually meant something. He sees that person. He has always seen that person. And what he wants to say to that person, to you, is not a lecture about what you should be doing better. It is not a reminder of how far you have fallen short. It is an invitation. A gentle, steady, unshakable invitation into something that the human mind was never designed to manufacture on its own. His peace. There was a young woman named Miriam who had built her life with extraordinary care. She had done everything right, or at least everything she had been told was right. She had worked hard from the time she was young, had kept her promises, had loved her family well, had built a career through years of sacrifice and discipline. She attended church. She prayed, not always consistently, but she prayed. She gave when she could. She tried to be good. And then, in the span of about 18 months, everything she had built began to shake. Her marriage, which she had believed was solid, began to fracture under the weight of things left unsaid for years. Her mother's health declined rapidly and unexpectedly. A restructuring at work left her position uncertain. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, she noticed something that frightened her more than any of the circumstances themselves. She had lost her ability to feel anything close to peace. Not just in the hard moments. In all the moments. She would sit down to pray and feel nothing but the static of her own anxiety. She would open her Bible, and the words would blur behind the noise of everything she was worried about. She would hear someone at church talk about the peace that passes understanding and feel, for the first time in her life, a kind of bitterness rising in her throat, because she wanted it so badly and could not find it anywhere. What Miriam did not yet understand, what she could not yet see from inside the storm, was that she had been trying to manufacture something that was never hers to make. She had been treating peace like a destination she had to navigate through the right combination of prayers, behaviors, mindsets, and spiritual disciplines. She had been trying to earn it, to produce it, to will it into existence through the force of her own faith. And every time it slipped through her fingers, she assumed the problem was with her, that she was not faithful enough, not trusting enough, not disciplined enough in her spiritual life. What no one had ever told Miriam, clearly and plainly, was that peace is not something you produce. It is something you receive. It is a gift, and gifts, by their very nature, are not earned. They are accepted. God's peace, the specific, supernatural, inexplicable peace that the Apostle Paul wrote about from inside a prison cell, is not a reward for spiritual performance. It is not the prize you receive when your faith reaches a certain level of maturity. It is not the feeling you get when all your circumstances finally line up and everything makes sense. Paul wrote about this peace that surpasses all understanding, while he was chained to a wall, while he was awaiting a verdict that could result in his execution, while he was separated from the communities he loved, stripped of his freedom, held in conditions that no human being would choose. And yet the peace he described was not theoretical. It was not aspirational. It was present tense. It was something he was actually experiencing in the middle of the most difficult chapter of his life. And the reason The only reason was not that he had mastered some advanced spiritual technique. It was that he had learned to receive what God was already offering. That is the secret that changes everything. Not a method, not a formula, a posture, a turning of the hands, open toward what is already being held out. There's a man in the Gospels named Thomas, and the church has spent centuries being slightly embarrassed by him, calling him Doubting Thomas, as though his uncertainty were a character flaw worth mocking. But look again at Thomas. When he heard that Jesus had appeared to the other disciples, he did not pretend to believe something he did not yet know for himself. He did not perform peace. He did not manufacture calm. He did not feel. He said plainly, honestly, with the kind of vulnerability that most people spend their lives trying to avoid, I need to see for myself. I need to touch for myself. I need to know. And what did Jesus do when he appeared to Thomas? He did not scold him. He did not remind him of all the times he should have trusted more. He simply held out his hands and said, "Here, touch." No, the peace he offered Thomas was not conditional on Thomas having already believed. It was offered in the middle of Thomas's doubt, in the middle of his uncertainty, in the middle of all the questions he could not answer, because that is how God works. He is meeting you exactly where you are right now. Maybe you are in a season that feels like everything is happening at once and none of it is good. Maybe you have been waiting for something for so long that hope has started to feel like a liability. Something that only makes the disappointment worse when it does not come. Maybe you have prayed the same prayer so many times that the words have started to feel hollow, like they are bouncing off the ceiling and coming back down unchanged. Maybe you have watched other people receive what you have been asking for and tried, with everything in you, not to let bitterness take root, but you feel it there at the edges of your faith, small and quiet and persistent. Maybe you are not in crisis at all. Maybe things are fine on the surface, and yet there is something underneath the fine that is not fine at all. A low hum of anxiety, a persistent sense that something is wrong even when you cannot name what it is, a restlessness that no amount of distraction can quite silence. Whatever is true for you right now, God's message does not change. The peace he offers is not reserved for people who are already okay. It is specifically designed for people who are not. Isaiah wrote about this in terms so tender that they still stop the breath thousands of years later. He wrote about a God who keeps in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on him, not the one whose circumstances have resolved, not the one whose questions have been answered, not the one who has achieved a level of spiritual maturity that puts them beyond the reach of fear or worry. The one whose mind is stayed. That word, stayed, means fixed, anchored, leaning on God himself. The peace is not in the resolution of the circumstances. The peace is in the orientation of the heart. And God himself is the one doing the keeping. There is something important in that word kept. It is not your job to maintain your own peace. You were never designed to be the guardian of your own inner life in isolation from God. The human nervous system, extraordinary as it is, was not built to carry the weight of everything the modern world places on it. The constant noise, the relentless information, the pressure to perform, to produce, to keep up, to figure out, to fix. The awareness, available at all times through the small glowing screens we carry everywhere, of every crisis happening everywhere in the world simultaneously. You were not built for this. Not on your own. You were built for connection to a source that does not fluctuate with the news cycle, that does not spike with the stock market, that does not shake when the diagnosis comes back or the relationship falls apart or the thing you were counting on evaporates without warning. You were built for peace that comes from the outside in, or more precisely, from the above down, from a place that is not subject to any of the forces that make your life feel unstable. And that peace is being offered to you right now, in this moment, not later, when things get better, not eventually, when you have worked through all your struggles and arrived at some calmer chapter of your life. Now, in this exact moment, with all of its unresolved complications and unanswered questions and ongoing difficulties, the peace of God is being held out to you like a hand in the dark, and all that is being asked of you is that you reach for it. Let's come back to Miriam for a moment, because her story does not end in bitterness. There came a night, a Tuesday as it happened, the most ordinary kind of night imaginable, when Miriam was sitting on the floor of her bathroom of all places, because it was the only room in the house where she felt like she could fall apart without her children seeing. And she sat there on the cold tile, and she did something she had not done in a long time. She stopped trying. She stopped trying to pray the right prayer. She stopped trying to feel the right feeling. She stopped trying to produce the peace she had been chasing for the better part of 2 years. She simply said out loud into the quiet of that small room, "I don't have anything left. I can't manufacture this. I can't fix this. If there is peace available to me, I need you to bring it, because I have nothing left to reach with." And something shifted, not the circumstances. The circumstances were the same on Wednesday morning as they had been on Monday. Her marriage was still fragile. Her mother was still sick. Her job was still uncertain. Nothing external had changed. But something inside her had changed, because for the first time in 2 years, she had stopped performing and started receiving. She had stopped trying to generate something and started allowing it to be given. And what came into that bathroom, into that cold, ordinary, unglamorous space, was something she had no other word for except the word she had grown up hearing in church without ever quite believing applied to her. Peace. Not the absence of problems. Not a sudden certainty that everything was going to be okay. Not a vision or a voice or a dramatic spiritual experience. Just peace. Quiet. The sense that she was held. The awareness that she was not alone in the difficulty. A stillness that did not depend on the stillness of her circumstances. She said later that it felt like being underwater and suddenly realizing you know how to breathe. That is the peace that passes understanding. Not because it is beyond us conceptually, but because it operates by a logic the mind cannot generate on its own. The mind, left to its own devices, will always try to find peace through resolution. If I can just solve this problem, if I can just figure this out, if I can just get to the other side of this difficulty, then I will have peace. But God's peace does not wait for resolution. It coexists with uncertainty. It is present in the middle of the storm, not as the calming of the storm, but as the anchor that holds in spite of it. It is peace that says, I do not know how this ends, and I am okay. I do not have all the answers, and I am okay. I cannot see the path clearly, and I am okay. Because I am not navigating this alone, and the one who is navigating with me has never lost anyone he was guiding home. You may be reading this and thinking, but you don't know what I'm carrying, and you are right. The specific weight of your life is known only to you and to God, and there is no generic word that can speak precisely to particular texture of your particular difficulty.